Hello, this is Lillian, welcoming you to the 1962nd edition of the Enfield Talking newspaper, Dateline the 17th of July 2014. The readers this week are Rod and myself, Lillian, with Colin on the controls. The items that we will be reading come from our local newspapers, the Enfield Gazette and Advertiser and the Enfield Independent, and are their copyright. Our title music is Country Rock Polka, composed by Pat Prilly, Fernand Boulon, Harry Brewer, and performed by Jean-Jacques Perry, and is used with his kind permission. Local stories include Blue Badge Cheats Are Prosecuted, MP Love Supports New Bank Account, Joint Effort Needed to Solve Cash Gap, and Development is Boost for Jobs and Housing. If you are experiencing any problems receiving your Enfield Talking newspaper, please phone Diane de Jersey on 0208 805 6578. That is 0208 805 6578. She is your listener's representative, and she will be pleased to help you. And now over to Rod, who will read the first item of local news.
A councillor has called on health commissioners, local authorities and GPs to work together to solve the mental health services financial woes. Alif Kazimoglu, member of the Barnet, Enfield and Haringey Joint Health Scrutiny Panel, reacted to the publication of a review of mental health finances that was presented to the panel yesterday by calling on other parties to take on more of the burden on the beleaguered service, which is facing a £15 million cash gap. The report, commissioned jointly by the Barnet, Enfield and Haringey Mental Health NHS Trust and the clinical commissioning groups of all three boroughs, found that while the trust provides good value for money, it is currently sustaining a lot more services than commissioners are actually paying for. Faced with increasing demand in recent years, the cost of inpatients, placements with private providers, and the cost of placing patients in expensive bed and breakfast accommodation are the greatest source of overspend. Speaking after the meeting, Ms. Kazimoglu said, "I believe the CCGs are not funding the health service properly, and they should increase funding. Mental health should be treated like physical health, but we are nowhere near that sort of scenario. The whole approach needs to change. With regards to the accommodation issue, local authorities can do more around that. There is a housing crisis, and that is affecting the trust. GPs can also do more to reduce admissions." The report makes 8 recommendations, including ceasing to place patients in B&Bs, expanding home treatment services, and reducing the caseloads of community teams by 10%. The Trust said it has set up a transformation board with the CCGs to look at each of the recommendations to assess their viability and how they might be implemented. An Enfield CCG spokeswoman added, "Commissioners have been working with the Trust and other providers to improve the patient journey from hospital care to community care and reduce delayed discharges. Further work has been undertaken to improve crisis services to enable patients to be supported in the community and prevent emergency admissions." Mrs. Kazimoglu added, "Ultimately, the issue is a lack of funding. It is clear that after years of efficiency savings, there is little room to make more."
3 people have been prosecuted for misusing disabled blue badges by Enfield Council. June Gregory, 63, of Maybury Close, Enfield. Orhan Kilinchan, 55, of Avenue Road, Southgate. And Ibrahim Dogan, 66, of Wolsey Road, Enfield, were summoned to appear at Tottenham Magistrates Court on July the 3rd, charged with using a disabled blue badge without the holder of the badge being present. In total, the three were ordered to pay more than £1,450 in costs, fines and victim surcharges. Gregory was found guilty in her absence and fined £200. Kilinchan and Dogan pleaded guilty to the offence and were given a 12-month conditional discharge that they must not commit another offence. Cabinet Member for Community Safety, Chris Bond, said, misusing a person's blue badge is an awful and completely unacceptable act. Blue badges are designed to make life easier for chronically ill and disabled people. They don't exist for others to con people and park wherever they like completely free of charge. I advise anyone attempting to commit this type of fraud to think about the consequences of their actions.
Edmonton MP Andy Love met residents at a post office on Friday to mark the opening of a new current account aimed at people struggling to get a balance sheet with a high street bank. Mr Love visited Lower Edmonton Post Office in South Mall, Edmonton Green, to mark the availability of the new post office current account at the branch, which is visited by 3,000 customers every week. The post office has two new types of current accounts. A minimum deposit of £20 is required for customers to open one, and they can access the vast network of branches across the country, which the MP said would benefit those unable to travel too far. Mr Love said, "These new accounts will make it much easier for people to do their banking at their local post office, close to home without having to travel far. This is particularly good news for the elderly and the disabled." Mr Love further said that residents should make full use of the new Payments Council current account switch guarantee and trustmark scheme, which makes it easier for people to switch their current account provider. It promises 7-day switching to customers and is aimed at significantly increasing competition in the high street. Mr Love added, "We need more competitive banking services targeted at people on low and moderate incomes. It will help customers who have been turned away by high street banks." Branch manager Karen Lucebo added, "This is an important step forward for us, and especially for our customers and the local community. We already offer a number of financial services products, and this new account will further meet our customers' needs. We have worked very hard to offer accounts that are fair and transparent, with no surprises."
Enfield Council claims to be the first local authority to apply for housing zone status with the Meridian Water development this week. The site in the southeast of the borough was where Mayor of London Boris Johnson and Chancellor of the Exchequer George Osborne announced the expansion of the zone scheme, which will see £400 million invested in 10 housing schemes across the capital last month. The Meridian Water development is expected to provide 5,000 new homes, 3,000 new jobs, as well as schools and a new railway station. By becoming a housing zone, it is expected the delivery of the development will be quicker. It would induce additional housing to be built nearby the development and allow for closely coordinated infrastructure and housing construction. Leader of the council, Doug Taylor, said, "Making Meridian Water a housing zone would make a real difference to making our aspirations. If we receive funding support from the GLA to make Meridian Water a housing zone, we could start work on key infrastructure later this year, which would be brilliant news for Enfield and good news for Londoners generally." Conservative group leader Terry Neville supported the council's application, but said the Labour administration had been lacklustre in progressing the development since they came to office in 2010. He said, "We badly need more housing in this borough now. That's why the Conservative Council initiated action on the Meridian Water site and progressed it from 2008 until the election in 2010. The reality is that for the past 4 years, Labour has been treading water since they inherited it from us in 2010, and all the while the price of housing has been rising, thus pushing up the eventual cost. The housing zone status, if granted, will not secure all the land ownerships. The only way that can be done is by making of a compulsory purchase order on the whole site, and that is why I have called in the most recent decision of the Cabinet, which fails to take the opportunity to do this. But Amit Oikona, Cabinet Member for Housing, told the Advertiser that the administration had been busy undertaking pre-planning reviews. I think we are ready to start realistically building homes by 2016. If Uncle Boris Johnson gives us some money. Talking about Mr. Neville's push to use CPOs, he added, "It's a style difference. He's Conservative, I represent Labour. We work with the interested parties and we negotiate. I understand parties and we negotiate. I understand things are progressing well. In every estate regeneration programme, in our last administration, we had orders approved, and we will in this case if needs be."
Businesses and residents are being urged to back a new overground rail route that will run through the area. Enfield Borough Council is calling for people to support Crossrail 2, which will run through New Southgate Station and into Surrey and Hertfordshire. The authority is strongly in favour of the plans and is asking the people of Enfield to support and lobby the government to deliver the project as soon as possible. The new service could be in place by 2031 and would reduce the journey time between New Southgate and Victoria Station to just 21 minutes. Enfield Council's Cabinet Member for Environment, Councillor Chris Bond, said, "Crossrail 2 is coming to New Southgate, and if it was successful, would be a massive deal for this borough. It would significantly improve transport links to Enfield and give residents greater mobility and personal freedom to access job opportunities and services. It would reduce congestion, drive economic growth, and revitalise the borough's economy. I'd urge residents to take part in this consultation and say yes to Crossrail 2. It's an exciting opportunity for Enfield and supports the Council's efforts to attract investment and better transport infrastructure to the borough. We are a business-friendly council, and bringing Crossrail 2 to Enfield will be a real boon to the companies in New Southgate and further afield."
And I have Monte Misc, Colin. He is the life president in Enfield of Over 50s Forum. If ever there's a saying relevant to the royal free takeover of Barnet and Chase Farm hospitals, it is surely, "By their deeds ye shall know them." Sometimes we replace deeds with fruits or works, but whatever the version you prefer, the meaning is clear. So I was interested to see that in the week ending June the 29th, the last week before the July the 1st takeover, some 98% of the 3,000 people attending Barnet A&E were seen, diagnosed, treated, admitted or discharged within the 4-hour target time. Chase Farm's A&E being closed, North Mid had 3,600 patients that same week, only 92.2% being treated, admitted or discharged within 4 hours. Forget the phony claims by politicians about people being seen within 30 minutes of going to A&E. What surely matters is the time taken to be treated, discharged or admitted. By that criteria across the country, 3 times more people are waiting more than the 4-hour target time. So while this is just one of the yardsticks by which we will rightly judge the Royal Free's performance at BCF, we will be kidding ourselves if we didn't heed the trouble ahead warnings, with a funding crisis being predicted before next May's general election. And there could be charges for some services within 10 years. Meanwhile, I'm told our local GPs, underfunded by some £20 million a year, are still waiting for that Gazette and Advertiser headline of May the 21st. Cameron promises funds for primary care after hospital services removed to be implemented.
A sewage works responsible for a notorious noxious smell which permeates the east of the borough has submitted a planning application that they claim will see the stem of the stench. Deepham's sewage works in Pickett's Lock, Edmonton, is widely believed to be the source of a smell of sewage that blights residents' lives in the height of summer. But now Thames Water, who operates the works, has submitted a planning application to Enfield Council, which, it claims, will reduce the number of people affected by the suffocating stench by 99%. While they will not be completely enclosing the plant, they have applied for permission to equip the site for predicted torrential rainfall expected to beset the British Isles as a result of climate change. And the sewage bosses behind the application are adamant that the extensive building works, which could take up to 3 years to complete, will boost the local economy with a promised 20% of jobs guaranteed for local workers. Although public meetings between Thames Water and Edmonton residents have at times been fraught, with many locals insisting that the only acceptable way forward would be a complete eradication of the smell, Nick Butler, head of the project, said, "The upgrade will significantly reduce odour from the sewage works. The work has to happen, and I'm delighted that all of the people we have spoken to agree with the revised plans to include extra measures to deal with the smelliest part of the works. The plans will see Thames Water pour £250 million into the revamp, as the company claim they need to upgrade the systems to make their discharge into the River Lee cleaner and safer." Residents can air their views by visiting the planning consultation page of the Enfield Council website. That's www.enfield.gov.uk.
Council opposition leader Terry Neville has been accused of playing political football with a committee after his request for an external audit of accounts cost the authority thousands of pounds. Dino Lemonides, chairman of Enfield Council's Audit Committee, blasted Mr Neville, a member of the same committee, after the Tory leader's objections to the council's annual accounts for 2012-13 led to an external audit by consultancy firm Grant Thornton, costing the taxpayer £24,000. Mr Neville raised his objections last year over the acquisition of a depot in Mawson Road, Ponders End, which he said represented poor value for money, and the introduction of new controlled parking zones in 2012, which he said were unlawful. He also raised an objection about the appointment of developer Cornerstone for the authority's primary school expansion programme and the sale of a council depot in Carterhatch Lane, Enfield. But auditors did not share Mr Neville's concerns, and the accounts were signed off last month, 9 months after they should have been finalised. Mr Lemonides told the Advertiser, "Mr Neville has played the committee like a political football. What he wanted to do is delay the process so he could accuse Labour of incompetence before the local elections, and he has wasted thousands of pounds in the process. The committee is there to help steer the council into safe financial waters, so he was clearly at the centre of a conflict of interest here. Officers did not go ahead and sign off the accounts before taking proper legal advice, and these matters had already been dealt with by the Overview and Scrutiny Committee and full council. Mr. Neville, who last month criticised the council's decision to create 3 new associate cabinet member roles at a cost of £22,824, hit back, saying the cost of the external audit was justified. My objections will ensure that in future the council will take more care in dealing with transactions, he said. We have to resort to these measures. It is the only way we can have a proper independent auditor look at the accounts. Labour councillors never voting in favour of any call-in. That's not proper scrutiny. I have not been deterred in referring matters to the external auditor where I consider necessary.
A disused bowls club has been transformed following a £60,000 renovation. Friends of Albany Park are hoping to recreate a community feel in the area after officially opening their new community hub. The group applied for money from the Enfield Residents Priority Fund at Enfield Borough Council and have seen their dreams for the derelict building become a reality. Group Chairman Gina Needs told the Enfield Independent the area had lost its sense of community. She said, "When I came here 25 years ago, there was a great community spirit, but now it's broken. People are afraid to even make eye contact, let alone talk to one another. But we did see a willingness from people around here to get behind our plan, and we had more than 250 signatures of support from residents. The hub, which will also be a cafe, is run by volunteers and will also be open for forums and groups." Ms. Needs added, "We want to have that community feel back, and this is a great opportunity for everyone round here. We are always in need of volunteers to help run the place. Hopefully we can all pull together to organise many fun projects at the park." Speaking at the opening, Councillor Yasmin Brett, who is responsible for community organisations, said, "Thanks to the Priority Fund, this excellent scheme has finally been completed. I would like to congratulate Gina Needs and the Friends of the Albany Park for their tireless dedication in getting this unique community facility off the ground. Some £5.5 million has been spent on Priority Fund projects since its inception, and this new hub is going to be a huge success." Councillor Chris Bond, Enfield Council's Cabinet Member for Environment, said, "Enfield is one of London's greenest boroughs, and Enfield Council is always looking for new ways to get people into our beautiful parks, to enjoy the surroundings, and to make use of the facilities. We have 123 parks and open spaces, playgrounds, sports facilities, historical sites, a nature reserve, and much, much more. And we would love people to come and find out about them all. The Albany Community Hub will ensure that even more people will now come to Albany Park, and I was delighted to open this fantastic new community space with Councillor Brett."
The father of a charity fundraiser who was hit and killed by a cab while chasing down a street thief in Rio de Janeiro in 2012 says he lost his son and best friend. Today, an inquest at Barnet Coroner's Court heard that Gareth Hooper from Friars Walk, Southgate, had been returning from a boat party with friends in the Flamengo district of Brazil's most famous city on the evening of March the 1st, when a thief snatched one of his party's camera and made off towards the beach. The 22-year-old, who had taken a break from his job at Amnesty International to travel through South America, gave chase and pursued the man across the 4-lane avenue Infante Dom Henrique. And in statement read to the court, investigating police officer Sandra da Silva Borgia said she spoke to the cab driver, who told her that he had been driving south towards the Copacabana when he saw the thief running across the busy road, followed by Mr. Hooper, who ran straight in front of his vehicle. He tried to brake his car and ended up hitting the man, she said. A friend tried to resuscitate the former Cockfosters Cricket Club under 17s captain, but he was pronounced dead at the scene. A post-mortem gave the cause of death as rupture of the thoracic aorta and spleen. Before coroner Andrew Walker gave the cause of death as road traffic collision, the court heard that police had been unable to locate the camera thief. Speaking after the verdict, Mr. Hooper's father, Dr. James Hooper, a lead clinician at the Royal Brompton and Harefield Hospital in South Kensington, said he was not surprised by his son's act of heroism. Paying tribute to the gifted musician and sportsman, Dr. Hooper said he was a very moral individual. He hated injustice, which is why he was working for Amnesty International. He had an enormous spirit about what he was doing. He added, "He was my son and my best friend. That's it."
Former Environment Secretary Owen Paterson has praised Enfield's very own commercial vineyard. Mr. Paterson ran out of superlatives for the site at Forty Hall Farm in Enfield, which produced its first batch in May 2014. The site is celebrating being the first commercial vineyard within London for 200 years. The MP, who was invited to visit the site in his role as Environment Secretary, which he lost in the cabinet reshuffle this week, said, "It's an absolutely brilliant project. One of my main aims is to substitute imports, and here we have a fantastic site. Some 30% of food and drink is imported, but could be produced here. Local food is better, cheaper, and a direct import substitute. People need to know this is happening." Started in 2009 by Sarah Vaughan Roberts, the project received a grant to help set up the 10-acre site. Kate McGeever, manager of Forty Hill Farm, said, "It's going really well at the moment. We had 170 bottles for the first time this May, and our first sparkling wine is due in August 2015. When we were all at full production, we hoped to produce 13,000 bottles from the 10 areas." Enfield North MP Nick Dubois described the vineyard as one of the crown jewels of the borough. He said, "This is the only commercial vineyard in London. One of our main reasons for having the Secretary of State here is that this is one of our jewels in the crown and is a little bit too much of a secret."
A blaze caused by an incense stick has caused serious damage to a house. 2 men and a woman were forced to leave a house in Warwick Road, Enfield Lock, after the stick set clothing alight. The fire caused damage to the first floor and the whole of the roof, and a total of 35 firefighters and 6 fire engines were called to tackle the blaze on Thursday, July the 10th. A London Fire Brigade spokesman said, "Keep clothing, fabric and hair well away from burning incense sticks, as they have hot embers that can cause fires. It is important to check that all candles, tea lights, incense or joss sticks are fully extinguished before you leave the room or go to bed." One of the men and the women were both treated by London Ambulance Service. The fire brigade was called at 8:14 p.m. and the fire was under control by 9:10. We have now reached the end of side 1 of this tape. Please stop your machine now. Take out the cassette, turn it over and start side 2.